Hello friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have 4 stories, so let's get started. Disowning their daughter, regretting forever. This basically happened like 3 weeks ago. I moved out from my mother's house since I was going off to university to study math and physics. My brother had a girlfriend who I really liked and respected. I soon accepted her as part of my family. She used to spend lots of time at our place because her parents were a nightmare. They were pretty poor, which doesn't have anything to do with them being a horrible parent, just for context. But they were also stingy AF. Here in Germany, you'll get money for your child to buy them food, provide shelter, warmth, and clothes. Her parents didn't spend her child money on anything for her. She had to sleep in a dark, cold room, buy her own clothes, and got no pocket money. The only money she got was from her job being a post girl. That job only amounted to 48 euros total in a month, and her bus ticket would already cost her 58 euros, so she had to ask her mother to lend her something, which she would always have to pay back to her. Her parents didn't want her to move out or go to study since she was way too intelligent for them to ever control, unlike her simple brother. When she said she wanted to move in together with my brother into the city where she'd gotten an apprenticeship, her mom nearly exploded. She actually had hoped she wouldn't get the job so she could realize how stupid she was for wanting a good future for herself. You can imagine how much her parents hated my brother. Fast forward. I come home to stay a few weeks at home, visiting friends and relatives. She's as usual at our house, but my mother then told me she was living here, permanently, being registered exactly at my home address. I'm a little stunned, as I had only some days before suggested the very thing to her, and she said she didn't want to break ties with her family. But things changed when her mom tried to cut up her prom dress she'd been given by my mother as a present. She was furious about what her mother wanted to do. She just explained that she never got such a nice dress, so why would her daughter? My brother's girlfriend just called my brother, my mother, then drove him since his car's getting fixed to her. They just packed up the most stuff they could carry, not including a lot of stuff my brother's girlfriend had gotten as a present, since she didn't pay for it, so it wasn't hers. So her bike, her clothes given to her by her aunt, and some of the presents she'd gotten from my brother had to be left behind since she was threatening with the cops. The last words were, "You can always come back to us when he has beaten you black and blue. We love you." Now, my brother can be a effing butthole, but he never got violent towards anyone. Since this day, she is living with us. Now, here comes the juice. Since my mother is really good with law and legal stuff, we've gotten her parents to pay her the child money they are now owing her. We also requested for a money support for her since she got no income. She's only 18, so she will get a lot of money, plus her child money, plus the apprenticeship earnings, plus a little extra from our family. Since she isn't living with her family anymore, they were getting Wohngeld, which is financial support given to you per person and square meters of your living space. The Wohnungsgeld also got a lot less. Mind you, her parents were gifting themselves smartwatches and laptops at Christmas. My brother's girlfriend had gotten a bottle of shampoo with a discount label on it. So after a few days, they realized they were in a lot of financial doo-doo and had to pay her back 4 months of child support, which they couldn't. They pleaded for the amount to be halved, which my brother's girlfriend could have agreed to, but she just took a pen and said, "F that," crossed out their plea, and put it back into the envelope. She now doesn't have anything to do with her family anymore, who tried through multiple means to get to her. I really admire her for staying that cool all these years. She rocks. Customer is not always right in my field. I'm on mobile, and this is only my second Reddit post. Forgive me for the errors. So I'm an ASE certified mechanic. I've been wrenching for 22 years. This story happened way back when I was still an oil change tech and learning my way. This customer comes in one day and wants us to look at his brakes and put some pads on the car that he bought. The shop manager had me bring the car in to look at. I pull the car into the shop and it's grinding real bad when I hit the brakes. I know it's more than a pad job. So the car goes up, the tires come off, and sure enough, he let his brakes go for so long there's no more brake surface on the rotors. He'd wore them down to the cooling fins in the middle of the rotor, so I of course tell my manager. Well, he told the customer, a crotchety old man, the situation and explains he needs new rotors. We even took him out and showed him there's really no rotor left at all. Naturally, the guy gets super pissed, says we're trying to get more money out of him. We better just do what he wants or he's going to go somewhere else, blah, blah, blah. My manager takes it all in, as cool as a cucumber. When dude was finished, my manager did the neatest thing I'd ever seen done at the time. He very calmly explained that the vehicle needed to be repaired correctly or he would red flag the car as it was unsafe to drive. Old boy looked like he was about to explode. Threatened to call the cops if we didn't return his vehicle. We were just crooks, the whole 9 yards. My boss said, "It's cool, I'll call them for you." Called in the State Highway Patrol, showed them the car in front of the customer. They looked at him and said, "This car is unsafe for the road. He either fixes it correctly or has to tow it out of our shop if he wants to go somewhere else, because they will not let it on the road." Sad thing is he ended up having to pay to have it towed out a few days later, which I'm sure cost more than the $40 for new rotors. I don't know if he got it fixed right or not. Most wrenches out there just want your car to be safe. We run on the same roads. I didn't know at the time, but I do now, that we have the authority to lock your car down if it is completely unsafe for the road until it's fixed correctly or towed somewhere else to get fixed correctly. I also work in a field where, no, the customer is not always right. Old man learned the hard way. A few others in my career have as well. My contractor was cheap, so I made sure to get my money's worth. So this actually is what happened between my father and the contractor who built his house, my childhood home. In 2000, my parents and their 2 young children, ages 7 and 5, that's me, were looking to move into a house big enough for a family of 4 that they could stay in for a very long time. They found a newly constructed street in a quiet neighborhood in a town known for being family-friendly. It was perfect. There were only 4 available lots, so my mother chose the one she liked best. Now, the houses on these lots were still under construction, so they were mostly just framing at this point. So my parents decided to contact the contractor, let's call him Alfred, and see if they could have any input into the design, as they had already set up a mortgage agreement on the property. Alfred agreed, but didn't let them do too much, which wasn't all that bad. My parents were pretty busy trying to sell their old house anyway. A few months go by and the house is finally ready to be moved into. My parents are thrilled. They finally have their family home. We move in, and everything's great for about 36 hours. On literal day 2, the furnace in the basement breaks and spews smoke through the whole house, setting off the smoke detectors. The police and fire department show up, investigate, and tell us we can return in 72 hours. So we stay in a nearby hotel for 3 days. Everything's great again until we start noticing a bunch of small details that Alfred seemed to have overlooked. My dad hires a home inspector to look at the house. The inspector finds numerous faults that could cost thousands to fix. My dad is pissed. So my dad, being the calm a-hole he is, and I love him for it, decides to get some help in paying for these repairs to his 7-month-old house. So my dad went to the bank and expressed interest in the other lots. He asked that a $1,000 lien be placed on each one. This was all legal. Alfred found out and was rightfully angry. He couldn't sell these lots because of the liens. He asked my dad to remove them. My dad agreed and said he would if Alfred paid for the repairs. Alfred refused to pay, so my dad refused to lift the liens. Alfred then sues my parents. My parents countersue. The court rules in favor of my parents. My dad had to lift his liens, but Alfred had to pay my parents $50,000 instead of paying $2,000 to $3,000 for the repairs. And a home inspector looked at the other 3 lots and made him pay for any repairs on them. Manager thought my job role was unnecessary, learns the hard way it wasn't. About 20 years ago, I worked in the technology field as a sales engineer supporting sales reps. A new sales rep manager joined the field team and didn't like the control sales engineers had over the sales process. Because I was the lead sales engineer, he decided to make me an example of his brilliance. He got a very large lead with the bank and proceeded to close a very large deal without involving any sales engineers at all. Just after the deal closed, he called to gloat, saying something to the effect of, "The biggest deal this month. Oh wait, you did not participate at all." About a month or so later, I get a call from that manager, in a bit of a panic, and I partake in a conference call with the customer. It is decided I need to come to the company for a meeting. At the meeting, I figure out the sales manager and the sales rep totally effed things up and sold the customer an incompatible set of solutions. In the meeting, I casually mentioned that maybe the customer could return one bit of stuff and replace it with another, as they were roughly the same price. After the meeting, sales manager starts bitching at me for mentioning price. Price was the exclusive domain of the sales rep. He calls my manager, crapped all over me. I didn't like my manager at all, so when he took the sales rep side, I said F you and quit. I sent a very lengthy defense of my actions during the meeting to HR. 4 months later, I get a call from another sales rep still at the company. He asks, "Hey, what happened at XYZ Bank? They're suing us." I call XYZ Bank and get the email for the CIO and send them a letter explaining, "I was the sales engineer for the company you were suing. Call me." I showed the bank the letter I sent my HR in which I claim our company lied to the customer to get a sale. Eventually, I get a subpoena to be deposed in the bank versus company lawsuit by my former company's lawyers. By that time, I was working elsewhere and hanging out on Yahoo stock message boards and bashing the company's stock. One day, another sales rep from a distant territory that I still talk to called me to say that a huge deal we had worked on for over a year had just fallen through in dramatic fashion. I posted it to the Yahoo message board devoted to that stock. The stock crashed $13 the next day. I wondered if my post had anything to do with it. About 6 weeks after the stock crash, it's the day before I'm supposed to get deposed in the bank versus company matter, I get served with a lawsuit by the company. They had used the SLAPP laws to get my identity from Yahoo and sue me for the post that crashed their stock. So I went to the deposition the next day and said, "I'm sorry, the company you represent today just served me with a lawsuit last night. This deposition is over." They were dumbfounded. Turns out there were two separate legal teams, one working on defending the company against the bank suit, and one finding that pesky internet troll that crashed their stock. The two never noticed the same person was central to each. The company settled with the bank and dropped their suit against me soon thereafter. That long letter I sent to HR, turns out the managers above me didn't read it. Once the lawsuit was over, the sales rep, the sales manager, and his manager were all fired. Well, it seems we've come to the end of our story, so thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.